A talk show host tried to humiliate black entrepreneur Jasmine Carter, but her epic clapback went viral for all the right reasons. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. The moment talk show host Frank Henderson opened his mouth, the entire studio seemed to go still. The cameras were rolling, the audience waiting, and the stage lights shone brightly. It was just another episode of his show. Well, that's what it seemed like. But for Jasmine Carter, the black entrepreneur sitting across from him, this was no ordinary interview. She had worked hard for everything she had. Jasmine didn't just build a business from the ground up. She fought against the odds, overcame countless barriers, and proved time and time again that nothing could stop her. But that day, she knew it wasn't going to be about her success. It was going to be about Frank's hidden agenda, an agenda that he thought would bring her down. "Tell us, Jasmine," Frank began, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How did someone like you even get this business off the ground? You know, it's not every day that we see someone from your community making it this far. What's your secret?" The question was blunt, almost cruel. The studio fell silent for a moment. The audience could feel the tension building in the air. Some looked at each other uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. Others shifted in their seats. Frank's words were heavy with prejudice, but Jasmine sat still, her face calm. She had been here before. She knew exactly what he was trying to do. Frank Henderson wasn't just asking questions. He was making a statement. He was using his platform to belittle her, and by extension, all the other black entrepreneurs who had fought to succeed. But Jasmine wasn't here to play into his games. She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. Jasmine had spent years dealing with comments like these, hearing people question her abilities, her worth. But each time, she grew stronger. Today would be no different. "Well, Frank," Jasmine replied, her voice steady but piercing, "maybe it's because I didn't let people like you dictate what I can achieve. I'm out here building something that matters, something that creates opportunities for people like me. You can mock me all you want, but I'm not here for your approval." Frank raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her response, but he quickly tried to recover. "Oh, okay," he smirked. "But tell me, Jasmine, how do you handle the pressure? I mean, with everything you've been through, don't you feel like the weight of expectations is just too much? How do you manage with, well, your background?" Her eyes narrowed. It wasn't the first time someone had brought up her background, her race, her place in society. But it was the last time it would matter. "My background doesn't define me," Jasmine said, her words coming out slow but powerful. "I define my future. You can judge me all you want because of where I come from, but I don't care. Your words don't make me who I am. They only show me how much work we still have to do." The host faltered for a moment. His smirk faded, and the arrogance he had been wearing so comfortably slipped away. The audience was silent now, listening closely. For the first time, Frank had no comeback. He was visibly thrown off. But Jasmine wasn't done. She had said what needed to be said, and she wasn't backing down. "You think you can put me down, Frank, but all you're doing is reminding me of how far I've come. You're not the one who defines my journey. I do." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. "So keep talking. It only proves how wrong you are." The room was still. No one moved. No one spoke. And just like that, the host had lost control. The audience was stunned, but Jasmine had delivered her message loud and clear. Nothing, not race, not stereotypes, not even the harshest words, could diminish who she was or what she had built. What happened next will leave you speechless. After Jasmine Carter shut down Frank Henderson, the crowd was on edge, waiting for his next move. But what they didn't expect was how this confrontation would change everything. The real battle was just beginning, and Jasmine was about to show the world what true strength looks like. The tension in the studio was palpable as the cameras continued to roll. Jasmine Carter had delivered a devastating blow to Frank Henderson, but the true impact of her words hadn't yet fully sunk in. As she sat back in her chair, the audience remained frozen, caught between disbelief and admiration. No one had expected a black entrepreneur, someone from a community often underestimated and overlooked, to stand up to the talk show host like that. But the surprise wasn't just in the way Jasmine had responded. It was in the way she remained composed, calm under pressure, and firm in her conviction. Her words had been measured, but powerful. And now, as Frank tried to gather himself, the eyes of the world were on her. This was no longer just a talk show. It had become a defining moment, one that transcended the boundaries of the screen and echoed out into the real world. Frank shifted uneasily in his chair, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. His smug demeanor had completely vanished, replaced by an awkward silence. The host, who had made a name for himself by pushing buttons and making controversial statements, had been outdone. He knew he couldn't recover from the weight of Jasmine's words, but instead of admitting his defeat, he tried to save face. "So, let's change the topic here," Frank stammered, clearly rattled. "Tell me, Jasmine, with all that's going on in your life, how do you deal with the pressure of being such a public figure? Doesn't it weigh on you?" The question was meant to deflect. Frank was trying to regain control, but Jasmine could see right through it. He wasn't interested in how she managed the pressure. He was trying to make her doubt herself. But she had already faced worse, and this was nothing compared to the battles she'd fought in silence, away from the cameras. With a soft smile, Jasmine leaned forward, not in anger, but with purpose. "You're right. There's a lot of pressure," she said, her tone calm but firm. "But pressure is a privilege. It means I've reached a point where I can make a difference, where my voice matters. And when I use that pressure to lift others up, to make sure my community has a seat at the table, it's all worth it." The studio fell silent again. The audience, who had been on edge for the entire interview, now realized the depth of her words. This wasn't just about business. It wasn't even just about race. Jasmine was speaking from a place of strength, from a position of leadership that transcended everything Frank thought he knew. But the host wasn't ready to back down yet. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone he had tried to belittle. So, in an attempt to regain control, he asked another question, this time a little more personal. "Okay, Jasmine," he said with a slight sneer. "You talk about lifting people up, but in a world like ours, don't you think it's impossible to change the system? I mean, let's be real. There are always going to be people who look down on you, no matter how successful you are." Jasmine didn't flinch. She had heard these words before. She had faced the same doubts, the same pessimism, every time she tried to step into a space that wasn't meant for her. But each time she proved them wrong. "Impossible?" she repeated, her voice steady but rising with a quiet power. "The system is flawed, yes. But impossible? That's a word I don't believe in. The world changes because people like me refuse to accept the status quo. And just because you can't see it happening doesn't mean it's not. The future isn't some distant dream. It's here, and I'm a part of it." Her words weren't just a response. They were a declaration. And with that, Jasmine had flipped the narrative. The world was watching, and now they saw her for what she truly was, not just an entrepreneur, but a force of change. She wasn't here to beg for respect. She was here to demand it. As Frank's smirk began to fade, the realization hit him. He wasn't in control anymore. Jasmine had taken over the conversation, and the world would now hear her truth, not the lies or stereotypes others had tried to push on her. The cameras zoomed in on her face, capturing the determination in her eyes. And in that moment, the audience knew one thing for sure. Jasmine Carter wasn't just a businesswoman, she was a trailblazer, and nothing was going to stand in her way. Just when it seemed like the tension was over, Jasmine Carter's story took an unexpected turn. What followed after her epic clapback was something even more powerful. A movement. But how did a single moment on TV spark a wave of support and change? Let's dive into the aftermath that sent shockwaves through the media and the world. After the interview, Jasmine Carter walked off the set with a sense of calm confidence. She had said what she needed to say, and the world had heard it. But what happened in the hours, days, and weeks that followed would forever change the way people saw her, and the way she saw herself. The clip of her confrontation with Frank Henderson went viral almost immediately. Social media exploded with comments, shares, and reactions. People from all walks of life were talking about it, black and white, young and old, entrepreneurs, and those struggling to find their way. It wasn't just about the clapback anymore. It was about the message. It was about how Jasmine had unapologetically stood her ground in a world where people often try to make others feel small. But the viral moment didn't stop there. The ripple effect began to grow, spreading beyond social media and into real-world conversations. News outlets picked up the story, covering the viral clip, analyzing the confrontation, and discussing its broader implications. Jasmine Carter, the black entrepreneur who had once been underestimated, was now a symbol of resilience and empowerment. For Jasmine, it was both humbling and overwhelming. The messages of support started pouring in. Strangers sent her letters, businesses reached out to collaborate, and people, especially young black men and women, expressed their admiration for how she had stood up to not just a talk show host, but to an entire system of inequality. For the first time, she realized that her voice wasn't just her own. It was part of something bigger, something far more impactful than she had ever imagined. But the story didn't end there. As the attention grew, Jasmine felt the weight of the responsibility she now carried. She knew that with this new platform came a duty to continue the conversation. She couldn't just let the moment fade into the background. She had to use it to make a real change. Determined to capitalize on this opportunity, Jasmine organized a series of speaking engagements. She began traveling the country, sharing her story, and discussing the challenges faced by black entrepreneurs in a world that often undervalued their contributions. She talked about systemic racism, the barriers to success, and the importance of community support. But it wasn't just about speaking out. It was about action. Jasmine knew that talk alone wouldn't create change. She started a mentorship program for young black entrepreneurs, giving them the resources, advice, and networks they needed to succeed. She opened up about her struggles, failures, and the lessons she had learned along the way, making sure that others didn't have to face the same challenges alone. Through these initiatives, Jasmine quickly became a role model for countless individuals. Her work went beyond business. She had become a beacon of hope, proving that success wasn't about where you started, but about where you were willing to go. As time passed, Frank Henderson's role in the viral moment began to fade into the background. He was no longer the center of the conversation. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about the change Jasmine had sparked. While he had tried to reduce her to a stereotype, Jasmine had turned the spotlight onto herself, and more importantly, onto the issues that mattered. The backlash against Frank was swift and intense. Many of his fans turned on him, calling out his disrespect and questioning his ability to continue hosting such a show. Sponsors pulled out, and his ratings, which had once been at an all-time high, began to drop. Meanwhile, Jasmine's business soared. More people were drawn to her company, inspired by her courage and leadership. She had gone from an entrepreneur trying to prove herself to an influential voice in the fight for racial equality in business. But what truly set Jasmine apart was her humility. Even with all the attention, she remained grounded. She knew the fight was far from over. She had seen firsthand how easy it was for people to forget the struggles that still existed. So, despite her newfound fame, Jasmine kept pushing. She knew that the path to true equality wasn't just about raising awareness. It was about making sure real, lasting change happened. As her story continued to unfold, it became clear that Jasmine Carter was more than just an entrepreneur. She was a movement, a living testament to the power of resilience, the importance of self-worth, and the belief that one person could change the world. What began as a viral clapback had turned into a catalyst for something much bigger. A reminder that, no matter how hard society tries to knock you down, you have the power to rise. As the momentum continued to build, Jasmine Carter's impact grew far beyond what anyone could have predicted. But the road to true change is never smooth. What followed next in her journey would test her in ways she never expected. This time, she wasn't just fighting for her business. She was fighting for something much bigger than herself. The world had heard Jasmine Carter's story, and it resonated with people on a level she hadn't anticipated. From the viral clip to her speaking engagements, she had become the face of a movement. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, a new challenge emerged, one that would shake her foundation and force her to confront not only the systemic forces she had been fighting against, but also her own inner doubts. It started with an unexpected email. One evening, after returning home from a speaking event, Jasmine sat down at her kitchen table, exhausted but satisfied with the work she'd done. The email subject line caught her attention. Offer to collaborate. Thinking it was just another partnership opportunity, she clicked open the message. But the content was far from what she expected. It was from a powerful, established company that had offered her a lucrative deal. An endorsement deal, no less. The terms were generous, but buried within the fine print was something that made Jasmine's heart sink. The company was known for its ties to controversial figures, including those who had been vocal in their opposition to the very causes she stood for. At first, the temptation was strong. The deal would solve many financial hurdles, and it was a chance to expand her business exponentially. The numbers were impressive, and she knew it could be a game-changer. But deep down, Jasmine knew that accepting this offer would mean compromising the values she had worked so hard to uphold. She could already see the headlines. Jasmine Carter, the face of corporate compromise. The offer stayed in her inbox for days as she weighed the pros and cons. She sought advice from mentors, business partners, and even friends. The answers were divided. Some urged her to take the money and run, to build her empire and worry about the ethics later. Others, however, reminded her of the very reason she had built her brand in the first place, to challenge the system, to stand for something greater than profit. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the business. Jasmine realized that her journey had turned into something much bigger than she had ever imagined. This was about legacy. She had worked tirelessly to prove that Black entrepreneurs could succeed without compromising their integrity. And accepting this deal would feel like admitting she was no different from those who had been in power for decades, profiting from inequality and injustice. After days of contemplation, Jasmine made the decision that would forever define her path. She politely declined the offer. Her response was calm but firm, explaining her reasons in a way that didn't burn bridges, but made her values clear. She could have taken the deal and become a wealthy, high-profile entrepreneur, but she knew the cost would be her soul. The decision wasn't easy, and it didn't come without consequences. The company, though polite in their rejection, made it clear they wouldn't work with her in the future. Some of her business connections were disappointed by her refusal. There were whispers that perhaps she had been too idealistic, too stubborn. Yet Jasmine stood her ground, knowing that staying true to her beliefs was worth more than any paycheck. As she reflected on the decision in the weeks that followed, she began to see the full impact of her choice. The media buzz around her only intensified. Journalists started reaching out to her, not just for her business success, but for her authenticity. People admired her for choosing integrity over greed, and her credibility skyrocketed. Jasmine realized that by declining the deal, she had solidified her place as a leader in the movement for ethical business practices, and her audience's respect had deepened. But there was another unexpected outcome. More entrepreneurs, particularly Black women, began to reach out to her, sharing their own stories of struggle. They, too, had faced the pressure to sell out for financial gain, to compromise their values for corporate interests. Many of them expressed gratitude for Jasmine's courage in standing firm. She had become not just a role model for business success, but a beacon of what it meant to stay true to oneself, even when the world was telling you to bend. Her decision also sparked a larger conversation in the business community about the ethical responsibility of entrepreneurs. It wasn't just about making money anymore. It was about the kind of impact one wanted to leave behind. Jasmine became the face of a new wave of entrepreneurship, one that emphasized accountability, transparency, and above all, a commitment to social justice. Yet, even as her influence grew, she never forgot the struggle. The quiet moments of doubt, the fear of failure, and the constant reminder that she was still part of a system designed to hold people like her back. But those moments were no longer her weakness. They were her strength. As Jasmine continued on her path, she saw her journey as part of something much larger than herself. She was no longer just an entrepreneur. She was an agent of change, a symbol of what could happen when you refused to be silenced, when you chose to take the harder path for the greater good. The world had been watching Jasmine Carter, but what happened next was something she never saw coming. A shocking betrayal within her own circle threatened to undo everything she had worked for. The question was, could she overcome this challenge and maintain her integrity? Or would this be the breaking point? As Jasmine Carter's empire continued to grow, so did the pressures that came with it. She was no longer just a small business owner. She had become a cultural icon. But with fame and success came new challenges, some of which were beyond her control. And just when things seemed to be falling perfectly into place, a betrayal hit her from an unexpected source, someone she trusted deeply. It all started with an unexpected phone call. Jasmine was in the middle of a meeting with her team, discussing plans for her next big event, an international summit on diversity in business, when her assistant walked in with the news. A popular influencer and former friend of hers, Tyrell Jennings, had posted something on social media. His message wasn't just a simple comment or a criticism. It was a full-blown attack on Jasmine, accusing her of selling out and forgetting her roots. Tyrell wasn't just any friend. He had been part of her inner circle for years. He had watched her rise from a struggling entrepreneur to a household name. They had worked together on multiple projects, including charity events, and had even shared personal stories of their struggles in the business world. Jasmine had trusted him, so to see him publicly slander her was a punch to the gut. The post quickly went viral. Tyrell's followers, many of whom were fans of Jasmine, began to split into two camps, those who believed her and those who sided with him. The comments flooded in. Some supported her, while others condemned her for not staying real to her community. It was as though her entire reputation was on the line. At first, Jasmine was in shock. She couldn't understand why Tyrell would betray her like this, especially publicly. She had always been transparent with him, sharing her challenges and fears about how her newfound fame might change the way people viewed her. But this wasn't just a personal attack. It was a business one, and it had the potential to undo everything she had built. In the days that followed, the situation only escalated. Tyrell went on multiple platforms, claiming that Jasmine had abandoned her black identity for corporate deals, accusing her of capitalizing on her race and using it as a stepping stone to bigger profits. He insinuated that her success had come at the expense of the very community that had supported her in the beginning. The attacks from Tyrell were relentless, and Jasmine felt the pressure mounting. How could she respond? She was a businesswoman, yes, but she was also a human being with real feelings. She had worked hard to build a brand that stood for authenticity and justice, and now someone she had once considered a friend was trying to tear it all down. After taking a moment to process, Jasmine knew she had to respond, not out of anger, but out of the integrity she had fought so hard to maintain. She took to social media herself, addressing the accusations head-on. In her post, she expressed her disappointment, not just in Tyrell's words, but in the way he had handled their relationship. "I've never forgotten my roots," Jasmine wrote, "and I will never turn my back on my community. But growth doesn't mean betrayal. Growth means creating something bigger than yourself while staying true to your values. It means helping others rise up, not tearing them down. To anyone who thinks otherwise, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I won't apologize for my success." Her words resonated deeply with her followers. Many who had once wavered between the two sides now began to see the truth in Jasmine's response. She wasn't abandoning anyone. She was simply expanding her horizons, using her success to create opportunities for others. But while the public response was overwhelmingly supportive, Jasmine knew the situation wasn't over. Tyrell's influence was significant, and his words could continue to harm her brand. Behind closed doors, Jasmine took action. She reached out to mutual friends and colleagues in the industry to repair the damage Betrayal had caused. Some were sympathetic to her, while others quietly distanced themselves from both parties. It was then that Jasmine realized the true test of her character wasn't just in overcoming her business challenges or dealing with public attacks. It was in how she handled the personal betrayals that came with success. This betrayal was a reminder of the fine line between friendship and business, and how quickly things could shift when money, fame, and jealousy entered the equation. Despite the hurt, Jasmine remained focused on her mission. She continued with her mentorship programs, growing her platform, and reinforcing the message that success wasn't just about financial gain. It was about building a legacy that would uplift others, especially those who had been overlooked for far too long. Tyrell's attack had hurt, but it also reinforced something Jasmine had always known. You can't please everyone, and the road to success isn't paved with easy relationships. It's built on resilience, authenticity, and staying true to your purpose, even when betrayal knocks at your door. Just when Jasmine Carter thought she had navigated every obstacle, a twist no one saw coming changed everything. In the final chapter of this story, Jasmine would have to make the hardest decision yet, one that would either solidify her place in history or force her to walk away from it all. The question was, would she choose to fight for her legacy or let it slip away? The last few months had been a whirlwind for Jasmine Carter. From dealing with the public backlash from Tyrell's betrayal to witnessing her business grow to unprecedented heights, she had been on an emotional roller coaster. But in the midst of it all, Jasmine had stayed true to her mission, to create a lasting impact on the world and empower other Black entrepreneurs to rise above the challenges they faced. Yet as her influence continued to expand, so did the pressure. The expectations of her were higher than ever. She had become the poster child for ethical entrepreneurship, social justice, and financial success. But with this newfound fame came a new, daunting responsibility. Could she maintain her integrity while balancing the needs of her growing business? It all came to a head during an exclusive event in New York City, where Jasmine was invited to speak at a high-profile summit on diversity in the corporate world. It was an incredible opportunity, one that many entrepreneurs would kill for. The summit was attended by major investors, influential business leaders, and even celebrities. It was the kind of event that could take her career to new heights. But just days before the event, Jasmine received a call that would change everything. The host of the summit, a renowned business mogul named Elijah Brooks, who had previously expressed support for her mission, made an unexpected request. He wanted her to tone down her speech. He wanted her to focus more on the positives of her success and less on the struggles of being a Black entrepreneur in a predominantly white industry. At first, Jasmine was taken aback. She had built her brand on honesty, authenticity, and the real experiences of Black entrepreneurs who faced systemic barriers. To dilute her message would be to betray everything she stood for. Yet the event was so important, the potential for growth so immense. She knew the world was watching, and the stakes were higher than ever. The dilemma tore at her. She could choose to stay silent on the issues that mattered to her, appease Elijah, and perhaps open doors to even greater opportunities. Or she could speak her truth and risk alienating the very people who had helped her get to this point. In her mind, it wasn't just about her. This was about all the entrepreneurs who came after her, the ones who would need her voice to fight for a more inclusive future. After spending days in contemplation, Jasmine finally made her decision. She would speak her truth no matter the consequences. She knew it wouldn't be easy, and the risks were high. She might lose corporate sponsors, and some of her business partners might distance themselves. But she also knew that if she remained silent now, she would lose everything she had worked for: her credibility, her integrity, and her legacy. When the day of the summit arrived, Jasmine took the stage with a sense of purpose that could not be shaken. The room was filled with some of the most powerful people in the business world, but Jasmine wasn't intimidated. She had faced worse. She had fought too hard for her voice to be silenced now. She began her speech by acknowledging the progress she had made, but quickly shifted to the realities of being a black entrepreneur in an industry that often overlooked people of color. She spoke of the challenges she faced, being underestimated, being told she wouldn't succeed, and being forced to navigate a system that wasn't built for her. But she also spoke about the power of perseverance, the strength of her community, and the unwavering belief that change was possible if they all worked together. As she spoke, she could feel the energy in the room shift. People were listening, not just to her words, but to her authenticity. She wasn't trying to sell anyone a dream. She was showing them the real, raw truth. And for the first time in her career, she felt completely at peace with her message. This wasn't just about her success. It was about creating a legacy that would inspire future generations of black entrepreneurs to fight for what was rightfully theirs. The reaction was overwhelming. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Investors who had once hesitated to back her now came forward with offers of support. Business leaders who had once been indifferent to her cause now pledged to invest in initiatives that would promote diversity and inclusion in the corporate world. But most importantly, Jasmine knew that she had done the right thing, not just for herself, but for every entrepreneur who had ever felt like the world was stacked against them. In the days that followed, the summit became a turning point for Jasmine. Her decision to speak her truth had sparked a national conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion in business. She had not only solidified her place in history as a successful entrepreneur, but had also become a symbol of what it meant to fight for change, no matter the cost. As she looked back on her journey, from the viral clapback to the betrayals, the public attacks, and the hard decisions, Jasmine realized that every step had brought her to this moment. She had fought for her legacy, and in doing so, she had inspired countless others to do the same. What an incredible journey, right? Jasmine Carter's story is a testament to the power of staying true to yourself and fighting for what's right, no matter the obstacles. But what do you think? How would you have handled the challenges she faced? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and keep making your own history.